Autumn painted the countryside in hues of amber and crimson as Suzanne Vance gazed out her kitchen window. Her reflection stared back at her, emerald eyes behind stylish glasses, chestnut hair falling in gentle waves around her shoulders. A distant bark drew her attention to Scout, her golden retriever, digging frantically near the vegetable garden. "Nathan, come look at this," she called, but received only silence in response. Her husband of 12 years was immersed in his laptop, as he had been most weekends lately. Suzanne sighed and dried her hands on a kitchen towel. The old farmhouse they'd purchased 3 years ago had become her sanctuary. Located on 5 acres of land just outside the small town where she taught 5th grade, it represented everything she'd dreamed of. Space to breathe, a garden to nurture, and peace away from the classroom. She adored her students, but teaching 30 energetic 10-year-olds drained her energy reserves daily. "Nathan," she tried again, louder this time. "Scout's acting strange. Can you come see?" "In a minute," her husband replied, not looking up from his screen. His dark-rimmed glasses reflected the blue light as his fingers continued typing. "Important email. The Westbrook account." Suzanne shook her head slightly and stepped outside. The October air carried the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. She wrapped her cardigan tighter around herself and walked toward Scout, who continued to dig with determination, soil flying between his paws. "What is it, boy?" she asked, kneeling beside him. Scout paused, looking up with intelligent eyes before resuming his excavation. His behavior struck Suzanne as peculiar. Scout was well-trained and rarely dug holes. Nathan had been insistent about that training after Scout had once destroyed a flower bed. Yet here he was, digging as if his life depended on it. "That's enough, Scout," she said firmly, but the dog ignored her command, something he'd never done before. Suzanne's curiosity deepened. She ran her hand along his golden fur. "What have you found?" In the distance, a car approached on their long gravel driveway. Suzanne recognized the silver Mercedes immediately. Eleanor Vance, her mother-in-law. She'd almost forgotten Eleanor was coming for Sunday dinner. Suzanne quickly tried to pull Scout away from his digging project, but he wouldn't budge. "Suzanne, darling!" Eleanor called, emerging from her car with a grace that belied her 65 years. Tall and elegant, with perfectly styled silver hair, Eleanor cut an impressive figure in her tailored pantsuit. Despite her initial intimidation when she'd first met Nathan's mother 12 years ago, Suzanne had grown to appreciate Eleanor's straightforward nature and quiet wisdom. "Hello, Eleanor," Suzanne said, rising to greet her mother-in-law with a warm embrace. "I'm sorry about this mess. Scout seems fixated on something in the garden." Eleanor's expression changed subtly as she glanced at the dog. "Animals have instincts we can't always understand," she said carefully. "Perhaps he senses something." Suzanne nodded, struck by the strange tone in Eleanor's voice. "Let me get you inside. Nathan's finishing up some work, but he'll be thrilled to see you." Eleanor followed Suzanne toward the house, but paused to look back at Scout, who had resumed digging with renewed vigor. "How are things, dear?" "Really?" The question caught Suzanne off guard. "Fine," she answered automatically, then hesitated. "Busy, of course. The new school year always is." Eleanor studied her face. "And Nathan? Working hard as usual?" "Yes," Suzanne replied. "The marketing firm just landed a major client. He's been working weekends, late nights." "I see," Eleanor said, her eyes reflecting something Suzanne couldn't quite identify. Concern, perhaps, or resignation. Inside, Nathan finally closed his laptop and stood to greet his mother with a quick kiss on the cheek. "Mom, good to see you. Sorry about that. Work emergency." "On a Sunday?" Eleanor's tone was light, but her eyes were sharp. "The corporate world doesn't recognize weekends anymore," Nathan replied with a practiced chuckle. "How was your drive?" As mother and son chatted, Suzanne returned to preparing dinner. Through the kitchen window, she could still see Scout digging. Something about the dog's behavior, combined with Eleanor's strange questions, unsettled her. She had always trusted her intuition, It had guided her through 12 years of teaching and helped her connect with even the most challenging students. Now, that same intuition whispered that something wasn't right. The evening progressed pleasantly enough, though Suzanne noticed Eleanor watching Nathan with unusual intensity whenever he checked his phone, which happened frequently throughout dinner. After dessert, while Nathan cleared the table, Eleanor followed Suzanne into the kitchen. "Your garden looks wonderful," Eleanor said quietly, helping load the dishwasher. "You've always had such a nurturing touch." "Thank you," Suzanne smiled. "It's been therapeutic, especially after long school days." Eleanor hesitated, then spoke in a lower voice. "Sometimes, Suzanne, the things we need most are hidden from view, waiting to be discovered." She glanced meaningfully toward the window, where Scout could still be seen in the fading light, returning to the same spot. Suzanne frowned. "Eleanor, what? Mom, are you interrogating my wife again?" Nathan appeared in the doorway, his tone jovial, but his eyes watchful. "Just girl talk," Eleanor replied smoothly. "I'm admiring Suzanne's garden." After Eleanor left that evening, Suzanne found herself unable to sleep. Nathan had fallen asleep quickly beside her, his breathing deep and even. At 2 a.m, she slipped out of bed and made her way downstairs. Scout met her at the bottom of the stairs, wagging his tail expectantly. "What is it you're trying to tell me?" she whispered to the dog. Suzanne grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and followed Scout outside. The night was clear, stars scattered across the black canvas above. Scout led her directly to the garden patch where he'd been digging earlier. In the beam of her flashlight, Suzanne could see he'd made significant progress. A deep hole now marked the spot where her carrots had been planted. Kneeling down, Suzanne directed the light into the hole. Something metallic reflected back. Her heart quickened as she reached in and felt the edge of what seemed to be a small box. Carefully, she extracted it from the soil. A metal tin, about the size of a paperback book, sealed with a simple latch. Suzanne glanced back at the dark house, at the window of the bedroom where Nathan slept. Why would someone bury a box in her garden? Had Nathan put it there? But if so, why? And why was Eleanor acting so strangely about Scout's digging? With trembling fingers, Suzanne opened the latch. Inside lay a small USB drive wrapped in plastic to protect it from moisture. Nothing else. No note, no explanation. Just a small plastic rectangle that might contain anything. Suzanne pocketed the drive and carefully replaced the tin in the hole, covering it with enough soil to hide it, but not so much that she couldn't retrieve it again easily. She patted Scout's head. "Good boy," she whispered. "Whatever this is, you knew it was important." Back inside, Suzanne quietly retrieved her laptop from her teaching bag. In the dim light of the kitchen, she inserted the USB drive and waited, heart pounding, as her computer recognized the device. A single video file appeared on the screen. The timestamp showed it had been created just 2 weeks ago. Suzanne hesitated only a moment before double-clicking to play it. The video showed a parking lot, seemingly filmed from an elevated position. The quality was decent, though not professional. Good enough to clearly identify the figures that came into view. Suzanne's breath caught in her throat. There was Nathan, her husband, standing beside his car. A young woman with long blonde hair approached him. They spoke briefly. Then Nathan pulled her close and kissed her passionately. Suzanne felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath her. She watched, numb with shock, as the video continued for another minute, showing Nathan and the woman embracing before getting into his car together. Then the screen went black. In the darkness of her kitchen, with Scout's head resting sympathetically on her lap, Suzanne Vance's world crumbled around her. The garden she'd so lovingly tended, the home she'd created, the marriage she'd believed in, everything felt suddenly hollow, a beautiful shell concealing a terrible emptiness. Morning would come, bringing with it decisions and confrontations. But for now, in the quiet hours of night, Suzanne allowed herself to simply feel the pain of betrayal, sharp and clean, while Scout kept silent vigil beside her. The following morning dawned with cruel brightness. Suzanne had barely slept, her mind racing through 12 years of memories, searching for clues she might have missed. She showered mechanically, applied her makeup with practiced precision, and dressed in her favorite emerald blouse, armor for the day ahead. Nathan was already in the kitchen when she came downstairs, pouring coffee into his travel mug. He smiled at her, the same smile she'd trusted for over a decade. "Good morning," he said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. "You look nice today." Suzanne stepped back slightly, avoiding his touch. "I have a lot to do at school. Early staff meeting." Nathan frowned, studying her face. "Everything okay? You seem off." "I'm fine," she replied, the lie bitter on her tongue. "Just tired. Scout had me up in the night." At the mention of his name, Scout padded into the kitchen, positioning himself protectively at Suzanne's side. Nathan glanced at the dog with mild irritation. "You baby him too much," he said, checking his watch. "I've got to run. Big presentation today." "With the Westbrook account?" Suzanne asked, her voice deliberately casual. "Yeah," Nathan nodded, collecting his briefcase. "Don't wait up. Dinner with clients after." Suzanne watched him leave, wondering how many client dinners had actually been rendezvous with the blonde woman. She listened to his car pull away before slumping into a kitchen chair, the weight of her new reality pressing down on her shoulders. The drive to Oak Ridge Elementary School that morning was a blur. Suzanne operated on autopilot, her teacher's instincts guiding her through the motions while her mind grappled with the evidence of Nathan's betrayal. She arrived early, needing the solace of her empty classroom to gather her composure. The familiar space, with its colorful bulletin boards and neatly arranged desks, had always been her sanctuary. Today, it felt like the only solid ground in her suddenly shifting world. Suzanne moved methodically through her morning preparations, writing the day's schedule on the board, setting out materials for their science experiment, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind focused. "Miss Vance?" A small voice came from the doorway. "Can I come in?" Suzanne turned to find Charlie Brennan, her newest student, hovering uncertainly at the threshold. With sandy hair that never seemed to lie flat and serious gray eyes behind round glasses, Charlie had transferred to Oak Ridge just 3 weeks earlier. The boy was exceptionally bright, but struggled socially, often spending recess alone with his nose in a book about robotics or engineering. "Of course, Charlie," Suzanne smiled, making a conscious effort to push her personal troubles aside. "You're early today." Charlie entered the classroom, clutching his backpack straps tightly. "Dad had an early surgery," he explained. "Dr. Brennan had to drop me off on his way to the hospital." Suzanne nodded. Charlie's father was the new surgeon at Memorial Hospital, a widower who'd moved to town after his wife's death, seeking a fresh start for himself and his son. She'd met Dr. Thomas Brennan briefly at the fall parent-teacher conference, impressed by his thoughtful questions and obvious devotion to Charlie. "How are you settling in?" Suzanne asked, noting Charlie's unusually tense posture. "Is everything okay?" Charlie hesitated, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "I guess," he said finally. "The other kids still think I'm weird." "Different isn't weird," Suzanne replied gently. "It's just different. Give them time." Charlie nodded, though his expression remained doubtful. He moved to his desk at the back of the room and began carefully arranging his books and pencils. Suzanne observed him with growing concern. Something beyond the usual new kid awkwardness seemed to be troubling him today. "Charlie," she said, approaching his desk, "is there something you'd like to talk about? You seem worried." The boy's eyes darted up to meet hers, then quickly away. "No," he said too quickly. "I'm fine." Suzanne recognized the phrase she herself had used with Nathan that morning. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Sometimes," she said carefully, "when we're carrying a secret or a worry, it can feel very heavy. Sharing it with someone you trust can make it lighter." Charlie's hands stilled on his desk. For a moment, Suzanne thought he might confide in her, but the sound of other students arriving broke the moment. Charlie immediately opened his science textbook, effectively ending their conversation. Throughout the morning, Suzanne divided her attention between her teaching responsibilities and discreet observation of Charlie. The boy participated in class discussions with his usual intelligence, but remained withdrawn during group activities. At recess, while other children played kickball or clustered in chattering groups, Charlie sat alone on a bench, fiddling with what looked like a small remote control. Curiosity piqued, Suzanne approached him. "What have you got there?" Charlie startled, nearly dropping the device. "Nothing," he said, attempting to hide it in his jacket pocket. "Looks like some kind of controller," Suzanne observed. "For a drone, maybe?" Charlie's eyes widened in surprise. "How did you know?" Suzanne smiled. "My nephew got one for his birthday last year. He's obsessed with it." She sat beside him on the bench. "Do you fly yours often?" After a moment's hesitation, Charlie nodded. "My dad bought it for me when we moved here. Said it might help me see the town from a different perspective." A hint of pride crept into his voice. "It's got a really good camera. I can record videos and everything." Something clicked in Suzanne's mind. A connection between Charlie's drone and the video she'd discovered last night. The footage had been taken from an elevated position, consistent with a drone's perspective. But surely that was a coincidence. Why would Charlie be recording Nathan? "That sounds fascinating," Suzanne said carefully. "Where do you like to fly it?" Charlie shrugged. "Around our neighborhood mostly. There's a park near my house with good open space." He hesitated, then added, "Sometimes I watch people. Not in a creepy way," he hastened to add. "Just observing. People watching can be interesting," Suzanne agreed, keeping her tone casual despite her racing heart. "You must see all sorts of things from above." Charlie looked down at his hands. "Sometimes things you don't want to see," he said so quietly, Suzanne almost missed it. Before she could probe further, the bell rang, signaling the end of recess. Charlie quickly pocketed his controller and hurried back toward the building, leaving Suzanne with more questions than answers. The afternoon dragged interminably. Suzanne maintained her professional demeanor, guiding her students through their lessons while internally processing the possibility that Charlie might somehow be connected to the video of Nathan's infidelity. After the final bell, she deliberately took her time organizing her classroom, hoping for another chance to speak with Charlie. Her patience was rewarded when she noticed him lingering by the cubbies while other students rushed out. "No rush today, Charlie?" she asked. He shook his head. "Miss Amber is picking me up. She's always late." "Miss Amber?" "My babysitter," Charlie explained, scuffing his shoe against the floor. "She watches me when Dad's working." Suzanne approached, sitting on a nearby desk to bring herself closer to eye level with the boy. "Is she nice to you?" Charlie shrugged noncommittally. "She's okay. Spends most of her time on her phone." He frowned slightly. "She doesn't like me much." "I'm sure that's not true," Suzanne began. "It is," Charlie interrupted with unexpected firmness. "She pretends to like me when Dad's around, but when we're alone, she calls me weirdo and tells me to stay out of her way." His voice lowered. "She's not a good person." The vehemence in Charlie's tone surprised Suzanne. "Why do you say that?" Charlie met her eyes directly for the first time that day. "Because she lies. To my dad. About everything." A knot formed in Suzanne's stomach. "Charlie," she said carefully. "This Miss Amber, what does she look like?" "Blonde hair, always wears high heels, lots of makeup." Charlie wrinkled his nose. "Smells like too much perfume." The description matched the woman from the video. Suzanne's mind raced, connecting dots she hadn't seen before. "Charlie," she said gently, "did you take a video with your drone recently? Something that upset you?" The boy's face paled. His eyes widened with a mixture of fear and relief, as if he'd been carrying a terrible burden that someone had finally noticed. Slowly, he nodded. "I saw them," he whispered. "Miss Amber and a man, in the parking lot by the lakeside apartments. They were—" He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. "Kissing?" Suzanne supplied softly. Charlie nodded again. "I wasn't trying to spy. I was just practicing flying near the lake, and they were there. I recognized Miss Amber right away." His voice trembled. "She's supposed to marry my dad next month. He loves her so much. And she was with someone else." Suzanne felt her heart breaking for the boy, even as her own pain throbbed anew. "What did you do with the video, Charlie?" "I didn't know what to do," he admitted, eyes downcast. "I saved it, but I was scared to show my dad. He's been so happy since we moved here, happier than he's been since Mom died. I didn't want to make him sad again." Suzanne waited, sensing there was more. "Then I found out who the man was," Charlie continued. "I heard Miss Amber talking on the phone about him. His name is Nathan Vance." He looked up at Suzanne, realization dawning in his eyes. "Your husband." Suzanne couldn't speak for a moment, the confirmation hitting her like a physical blow. "Yes," she finally managed. "And the video, did you make a copy of it?" Charlie nodded. "I put it on a USB drive. I found out where the man's mother lived, Mrs. Vance, and I left it in her mailbox with a note. I thought, maybe she could help." Eleanor's strange behavior suddenly made sense. She'd received Charlie's video and, unsure how to proceed, had hidden it in the garden during her visit, knowing Scout might find it. A roundabout way of ensuring Suzanne would discover the truth without Eleanor having to directly betray her son. "Charlie, Suzanne began, but was interrupted by a sharp voice from the doorway. "There you are. I've been waiting in the car for 10 minutes. Suzanne looked up to see a young woman with long blonde hair and immaculate makeup standing in the classroom entrance. She wore a tight dress that seemed inappropriate for picking up a child from school, and her expression was one of barely concealed irritation. "Sorry, Miss Amber," Charlie mumbled, grabbing his backpack. "I was talking to Miss Vance." Amber's gaze shifted to Suzanne, her perfectly plucked eyebrows rising slightly. "Vance?" she repeated, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "I'm Charlie's teacher," Suzanne said evenly, rising to her full height. "Suzanne Vance." Something like panic flashed in Amber's eyes before she quickly composed herself. "Well, nice to meet you," she said with artificial brightness. "Come on, Charlie. Your father will be home early today, and we need to get dinner started." As Charlie reluctantly moved toward the door, he cast one last meaningful glance at Suzanne. Part apology, part plea. Suzanne nodded slightly, trying to convey reassurance. She watched them leave, Amber's hand gripping Charlie's shoulder a little too tightly, her high heels clicking aggressively down the hallway. Alone in her classroom, Suzanne sank into her chair, the full picture finally coming into focus. Nathan was having an affair with Amber, who was engaged to Dr. Brennan, Charlie's father. The boy had accidentally discovered their betrayal and sought help in the only way he knew how. Suzanne closed her eyes, feeling both devastated and determined. This was no longer just about her marriage. A child was suffering, and another good man was being deceived. Whatever she decided to do next would affect not just her life, but Charlie's and Dr. Brennan's as well. Scout was waiting faithfully by her car when Suzanne finally left the school. As she drove home, the loyal dog beside her, Suzanne knew that the comfortable life she had built was about to change forever. The truth had been unearthed, like the metal box Scout had discovered in her garden. And now she had to decide what to do with it. That evening, the farmhouse felt different to Suzanne. Smaller somehow, its warm familiarity replaced by a suffocating awareness of deception. She moved through the kitchen mechanically, preparing a simple dinner she knew she wouldn't eat, her mind replaying her conversation with Charlie. Nathan had texted that he'd be late, citing the client dinner she now recognized as a lie. She wondered if he was with Amber, if they were laughing together about their secret relationship, planning their future while dismantling two families in the process. Scout remained glued to her side, sensing her distress. Occasionally, he would nudge her hand with his nose, offering silent comfort. Suzanne found herself speaking to him as she chopped vegetables. "What am I going to do, Scout?" she whispered. "Confront Nathan? Tell Dr. Brennan? Pretend I don't know?" The dog tilted his head, his brown eyes reflecting unwavering loyalty. Suzanne's phone rang, startling her. Eleanor's name appeared on the screen. Taking a deep breath, Suzanne answered. "Hello, Eleanor." "Suzanne." Eleanor's voice was cautious. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," Suzanne replied, setting down her knife. "Actually, I'm glad you called." "You found it, didn't you?" Eleanor asked after a moment of silence. "In the garden." Suzanne moved to sit at the kitchen table. "Yes, Scout led me right to it." Eleanor sighed, a sound heavy with regret. "I didn't know what to do, Suzanne. When I received that package, I was shocked, devastated. I raised Nathan better than this." "Why didn't you just tell me?" Suzanne asked, unable to keep the hurt from her voice. "Why the elaborate scheme with hiding it in my garden?" "I tried to confront Nathan first," Eleanor admitted. "Last week I showed him the video. He denied everything, claimed it was doctored, that someone was trying to sabotage his career." Her voice hardened. "I've known my son his entire life. I know when he's lying." Suzanne closed her eyes, absorbing this new information. "So you decided to let me find out on my own?" "I couldn't bring myself to show you directly," Eleanor said. "It seemed too cruel. But I couldn't let you continue in ignorance either. I thought, if Scout found it, it might seem less like a deliberate exposure." "I know who sent you the video," Suzanne said quietly. "A student of mine, Charlie Brennan, the son of the woman's fiancé." Eleanor gasped. "A child?" "Oh, Suzanne. He recorded it accidentally with his drone," Suzanne explained. "He's been carrying this burden alone, Eleanor. A 10-year-old boy." "That poor child," Eleanor murmured. "What will you do now?" It was the question Suzanne had been asking herself all day. "I don't know yet, but I can't pretend I don't know. And I can't let Charlie suffer alone with this." "Whatever you decide," Eleanor said firmly, "I want you to know I'm on your side. Nathan is my son, and I love him, but what he's doing is wrong. You deserve better, Suzanne." Dawn, after ending the call, Suzanne felt marginally stronger. Having Eleanor's support meant more than she'd expected. She wasn't alone in this. The sound of Nathan's car in the driveway came just after 9. Suzanne had settled in the living room, pretending to grade papers while Scout dozed at her feet. She'd decided against an immediate confrontation, needing more time to consider the implications for Charlie and his father. "Hey," Nathan said, dropping his briefcase by the door. "Sorry I'm so late. The Westbrook people talk forever." He loosened his tie and approached to kiss her. Suzanne turned her head slightly, his lips landing on her cheek instead of her mouth. If Nathan noticed her coolness, he didn't comment. "There's a plate for you in the microwave," she said, returning her attention to her papers. "Thanks, but I ate with the clients." He dropped into the armchair across from her. "How was your day?" "Interesting," Suzanne replied, meeting his eyes steadily. "I had a revealing conversation with a student." "Oh?" Nathan's interest seemed genuine, though distracted as he checked messages on his phone. "Yes, a bright boy named Charlie. He's quite talented with technology, especially his drone." Nathan's fingers stilled on his phone screen. "Drone?" Suzanne nodded, watching him carefully. "He likes to fly it near the lake, records video." Nathan's expression changed subtly, a tightening around the eyes, a slight tensing of his shoulders. "Sounds like a clever kid," he said, his casual tone forced. "He is," Suzanne agreed. "Very observant." Nathan held her gaze for a long moment, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Then he stood abruptly. "I'm exhausted. Think I'll shower and turn in." "Nathan," Suzanne said as he reached the stairs, "do you know Dr. Thomas Brennan, the new surgeon at Memorial?" Nathan paused, his back to her. "No," he said after a beat. "Should I?" "Just curious," Suzanne replied. "His son, Charlie, is in my class." Nathan nodded without turning, then continued upstairs. Suzanne remained in the living room, Scout's head now alert in her lap, both of them listening to the shower running overhead. Nathan's reaction had confirmed what she already knew. He recognized the threat in Charlie's drone and Dr. Brennan's name. That night, lying rigid beside Nathan's sleeping form, Suzanne made her decision. she would not confront him yet. First, she needed to speak with Dr. Brennan. He deserved to know the truth before his wedding, and Charlie needed adults who could protect him from the fallout. The next morning, Suzanne rose early, leaving a note for Nathan claiming a before-school meeting. Instead, she drove to Memorial Hospital, having looked up Dr. Brennan's schedule online. If she timed it right, he might catch him before his first surgery. The hospital lobby was quiet at 6:30 in the morning. Suzanne approached the information desk, where a tired-looking volunteer was arranging visitor badges. "Good morning," Suzanne said. "I'm looking for Dr. Thomas Brennan. It's rather urgent." The volunteer consulted a computer screen. "Dr. Brennan is in early rounds. Are you a patient?" "No, I'm his son's teacher," Suzanne explained. "It's regarding Charlie." The woman's expression softened. "Oh, Charlie. Such a sweet boy." He hesitated, then reached for the phone. "I'll page Dr. Brennan. You can wait in that alcove for privacy." Suzanne thanked her and moved to the indicated area, her heart pounding. What would she say to this man she barely knew? How did one delicately explain that his fiancé was having an affair with another woman's husband? She didn't have long to worry. Within minutes, a tall man in a white coat appeared, moving quickly toward her with concern etched on his face. "Miss Vance," he said, extending his hand, "is Charlie all right?" Thomas Brennan was younger than Suzanne had remembered from their brief meeting at the school conference, perhaps early 40s, with kind eyes and premature silver at his temples. His obvious concern for his son made what she had to tell him even more difficult. "Charlie is fine, physically," Suzanne assured him, shaking his hand. "But there's something I need to discuss with you, privately." Dr. Brennan's brow furrowed, but he nodded. "My office is just down this hall." He led her to a small but orderly office and closed the door, gesturing for her to sit. "Now, what's this about?" Suzanne took a deep breath. "Dr. Brennan." "Tom, please," he interrupted with a tired smile. "Tom," she amended. "This is extremely difficult." She clasped her hands in her lap to stop them trembling. "It's about Amber." His expression shifted from concern to confusion. "Amber? Charlie's babysitter? Has she done something inappropriate?" "In a manner of speaking," Suzanne said carefully, "I believe she's been unfaithful to you." Tom stared at her, uncomprehending. "I'm sorry?" "Charlie accidentally recorded something with his drone," Suzanne continued, forcing herself to maintain eye contact. "A video of Amber with another man. My husband, actually. Nathan Vance." The color drained from Tom's face. For several seconds, he said nothing, his physician's training perhaps helping him process shock without immediate outward reaction. "There must be some mistake," he finally said, though his tone suggested he was already considering the possibility. "I've seen the video myself," Suzanne said gently. "There's no mistake." Tom stood and moved to the window, his back to her. "How did you get this video?" Suzanne explained about Charlie's discovery, his anonymous delivery to Eleanor, and Scout's unearthing of the USB drive. As she spoke, she could see Tom's shoulders growing increasingly tense. "Charlie has been carrying this burden alone," she concluded. "He didn't want to hurt you, but he's been struggling. I noticed it in his behavior at school." Tom turned back to face her, his expression now a mixture of pain and barely contained anger. "Why are you telling me this? Why not just confront your husband and leave me in ignorance?" "Because Charlie matters to me," Suzanne replied simply, "and because I would want to know before making a lifetime commitment to someone who wasn't faithful." Tom sank back into his chair, running a hand through his hair. "I proposed to Amber 6 months ago," he said quietly. "Charlie's mother has been gone 3 years. I thought Amber was good for us. A fresh start." His laugh was hollow. "I'm a surgeon. I'm supposed to be observant, detailed. How did I miss this?" "We see what we want to see in the people we love," Suzanne said, thinking of her own blindness to Nathan's deception. Tom's gaze sharpened. "You haven't confronted your husband yet?" Suzanne shook her head. "I wanted to speak with you first. Our situations are connected. Charlie, Tom said suddenly, his expression changing to alarm. "He's with Amber after school today. If she suspects he knows something." Suzanne hadn't considered this possibility. "I didn't tell him I would be speaking with you, but he's a perceptive child. If Amber realizes Charlie recorded them..." Tom was already reaching for his phone. "I need to get him away from her." He dialed quickly, putting the phone to his ear. After several seconds, his expression darkened. No answer. "Try the school," Suzanne suggested. "He should be in his first class now." Tom dialed again, explaining the situation to the school secretary. His relief was visible when told that Charlie was indeed in class. "Please have him remain at school after dismissal," Tom instructed. "His teacher, Miss Vance, will supervise him until I arrive. It's a family emergency." After ending the call, Tom looked at Suzanne. "I've imposed on you enough already. But would you mind?" "Of course I'll watch Charlie," Suzanne assured him. "I was planning to stay late today anyway." "Thank you," Tom said, genuine gratitude in his voice, "for everything. For caring enough about my son to have this difficult conversation." As Suzanne rose to leave, Tom remained seated, looking suddenly older than when she'd arrived. "What will you do about your husband?" he asked. Suzanne paused at the door. "I don't know yet, but whatever happens, I think we should ensure Charlie is protected from as much of the fallout as possible." Tom nodded, a flash of respect in his eyes. "Agreed." Driving to Oak Ridge Elementary, Suzanne felt oddly lighter despite the painful conversation. The truth was out now, at least partially. She and Tom were no longer stumbling in the dark, unaware of the betrayal connecting their lives. The school day passed in a blur of lessons and student interactions. Charlie seemed more withdrawn than usual, avoiding eye contact when Suzanne called on him in class. At lunch, she noticed him sitting alone again, and made a point of joining him. "Everything okay, Charlie?" she asked, unwrapping her sandwich. He shrugged, poking at his apple slices without eating them. "Miss Amber was acting weird this morning," he said after a moment. "She kept asking me questions about you." Suzanne tried to keep her expression neutral. "What kind of questions?" "If you'd said anything about her. If I'd told you anything." Charlie looked up, eyes worried. "I think she knows I saw her with that man." "Charlie," Suzanne said carefully, "your father is picking you up after school today. You'll stay with me in my classroom until he arrives." Relief washed over the boy's face. "Really? I don't have to go with Miss Amber?" "Not today," Suzanne assured him. Charlie seemed to relax slightly, finally taking a bite of his lunch. "Are you going to tell my dad about the video?" Suzanne hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "Your father and I have already spoken," she said gently. "He knows about the video, and he's not upset with you. He understands you were in a difficult position." "Is he mad at Miss Amber?" Charlie asked, his voice small. "He's processing everything," Suzanne replied honestly. "Sometimes adults need time to figure out their feelings, just like kids do." Charlie nodded thoughtfully. "The man in the video, he's your husband, isn't he?" "Yes," Suzanne admitted, seeing no point in denial. "His name is Nathan." "Are you mad at him?" Charlie's directness was typical of children his age, unclouded by adult social conventions. "I'm sad," Suzanne said after a moment's reflection, "and disappointed. And yes, a little mad, too." Charlie considered this. "That's how I felt when I saw the video. All mixed up inside." He looked at Suzanne with sudden intensity. "Are you going to get divorced?" The question caught Suzanne off guard. "I don't know yet, Charlie. These kinds of decisions take time." "My dad didn't want to move after my mom died," Charlie said, abruptly changing direction. "But Miss Amber said it would be good for us to have a fresh start. I think she just wanted to be far away from her old life." Suzanne processed this new information. "How long has your dad known Amber?" 8 months, Charlie replied promptly. "They met at the hospital where he used to work. She was a nurse, but she got fired. Dad helped her get a job as my babysitter instead." The pieces continued to fall into place. Amber had likely been looking for security and stability with Tom, while maintaining her relationship with Nathan on the side. The calculated nature of it made Suzanne's stomach turn. After school, as promised, Charlie remained in Suzanne's classroom. They worked together on his science project, a model demonstrating wind energy, until Tom arrived, looking exhausted but resolute. "Dad!" Charlie ran to him, receiving a tight hug in return. "Hey, buddy," Tom said, his voice rough with emotion. "How about we go get some ice cream and talk?" Charlie nodded eagerly, then turned back to Suzanne. "Thank you for helping with my project, Miss Vance." "Anytime, Charlie," she smiled, touched by his politeness even in difficult circumstances. Tom approached her desk while Charlie gathered his belongings. "I spoke with Amber," he said quietly. "She denied everything at first, then tried to blame me for being distant. Finally admitted it when I mentioned the video." "I'm sorry," Suzanne said sincerely. Tom shook his head. "Don't be. Better to know now than after the wedding." He hesitated, then added, "She's been seeing your husband for nearly 7 months, since before we moved here." The timeline hit Suzanne like a physical blow. 7 months. While she'd been planning their anniversary dinner, working in their garden, Nathan had been building a relationship with another woman. "What will you do now?" Tom asked, echoing her earlier question to him. Suzanne glanced at Charlie, who was pretending not to listen while organizing his backpack with painstaking care. "Confront the truth," she said, however painful. As Tom and Charlie left, Suzanne began gathering her own things, steeling herself for the conversation awaiting her at home. Outside, dark clouds were gathering, a storm rolling in from the west. By the time she reached her car, the first heavy drops were falling, mirroring the emotional tempest she was about to face. Scout greeted her at the door with anxious whines, sensing the tension in her body. Suzanne knelt to embrace him, drawing strength from his unwavering loyalty. "It's okay, boy," she whispered. "We're going to be okay." She straightened as headlights swept across the living room wall. Nathan was home early for once. Perhaps he'd sensed the reckoning that was coming. Or perhaps Amber had already warned him. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Suzanne stood in the center of her living room, Scout at her side, waiting for the door to open and the storm to break. The door swung open, and Nathan stepped inside, shaking raindrops from his coat. He froze when he saw Suzanne standing in the center of the room, Scout positioned protectively at her side. "What's this?" he asked, his casual tone betrayed by the wariness in his eyes. "We need to talk, Nathan," Suzanne said quietly. He carefully hung his coat on the rack, buying time. "About? About Amber Collins," Suzanne replied, watching his face intently. "About your 7-month affair with her." Nathan's expression cycled rapidly through surprise, denial, and finally, resignation. He moved to the bar cart in the corner and poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey. "How long have you known?" he asked after taking a large swallow. "Does it matter?" Suzanne countered, her voice steady despite the thundering of her heart. Nathan sank into an armchair, suddenly looking smaller than Suzanne had ever seen him. "I suppose not." He stared into his glass. "How did you find out?" "Charlie Brennan recorded you with his drone," Suzanne said. "By accident. He was just a child flying his toy, Nathan, and he captured his babysitter, betraying his father with my husband." Nathan winced at the harshness in her tone. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen?" Suzanne demanded, her composure beginning to crack. "Were you planning to simply leave me one day? Or continue living a double life indefinitely?" "I don't know," Nathan admitted, meeting her gaze finally. "It started as nothing serious, just an attraction. But then it became more." Suzanne felt her hands begin to shake. 7 months, Nathan. Half a year of lies. Every late meeting, every business trip, every client dinner. Was it all just cover for being with her? "Not all of it," he said defensively. "The Westbrook account is real." "Oh, well, that makes it better," Suzanne shot back, sarcasm dripping from her words. "You occasionally did legitimate work in between betraying our marriage." Thunder crashed outside, closer now, the storm moving directly overhead. Scout pressed against Suzanne's leg, offering silent support. "I didn't mean to hurt you," Nathan said, his voice low. Suzanne laughed, a hollow sound without mirth. That might be the worst part. You didn't even consider me enough to actively mean anything. I was just background, furniture in the life you were increasingly spending elsewhere. Nathan drained his glass and set it down heavily. That's not fair. Fair? Suzanne's voice rose. You want to talk about fair? How fair was it to me when you were building a relationship with another woman while I was planning our anniversary? How fair was it to Dr. Brennan, who trusted Amber with his son? How fair was it to Charlie, who had to carry the burden of your secret? Nathan's head snapped up. You talked to Brennan? Of course I did, Suzanne replied. Unlike you and Amber, I actually consider how my actions affect others. What did he say? Nathan asked, suddenly looking concerned. He was devastated, Suzanne said, as any decent person would be upon learning they've been deceived by someone they loved. Nathan stood, pacing restlessly. This is going to be a mess. My career, my reputation. Your career? Suzanne interrupted incredulously. That's what you're worried about. You don't understand, Nathan said, running a hand through his hair. The partners at the firm are very traditional. If this gets out, Suzanne repeated. Nathan, this is out. Your mother knows. Dr. Brennan knows. Charlie knows. My mother. Nathan stopped pacing, staring at her in shock. How does she know? Charlie sent her the video anonymously, Suzanne explained. She confronted you last week. You denied it. Nathan's face paled. That's why she was acting so strange at dinner. She tried to give you a chance to come clean, Suzanne said. You chose to continue lying. Nathan slumped back into the chair. What happens now? It was the question Suzanne had been asking herself since discovering the USB drive. What did happen now? Could their marriage survive this level of betrayal? Did she even want it to? I don't know, she answered honestly. But I do know I can't stay here tonight. I've packed a bag. I'm going to a hotel. Suzanne, wait, Nathan said, rising quickly. We should talk about this. Work through it. Now, you want to talk? Suzanne shook her head in disbelief. After months of deception, now communication is important to you? I made a mistake, he insisted, moving toward her. A terrible mistake. But we've built a life together. 12 years, Suze. That has to count for something. Suzanne stepped back, maintaining distance between them. It counted for something to me, Nathan. Apparently, not to you. She moved to the entryway where she'd left her overnight bag. Scout followed closely, unwilling to leave her side. Where are you going? Nathan asked, his voice edged with panic. I told you, a hotel, Suzanne replied, reaching for her keys. For how long? I don't know, she said, facing him one last time. I need space to think. Nathan's expression hardened suddenly. It's him, isn't it? Brennan. You've already aligned yourself with him against me. Suzanne stared at him, momentarily speechless at the accusation. Dr. Brennan is as much a victim in this as I am, she finally said. The only people who aligned against anyone are you and Amber. You seemed awfully quick to run to him with your discovery, Nathan pressed, a new note of suspicion in his voice. How long have you been talking to him behind my back? The absurdity of his accusation hit Suzanne like a slap. Are you seriously trying to accuse me of something? After what you've done? Nathan had the grace to look ashamed, but persisted. I just find it interesting that you immediately formed an alliance with him. Makes me wonder what else is going on. What's going on is that I'm married to a man I no longer recognize, Suzanne said quietly. Goodbye, Nathan. She walked out into the rain, Scout trotting faithfully beside her. The storm had intensified, sheets of water cascading from the dark sky, soaking her within seconds. Somehow, the physical discomfort felt appropriate, an external manifestation of the tempest within. Suzanne drove aimlessly at first, windshield wipers working furiously against the downpour. Scout sat in the passenger seat, occasionally whining with concern. After 30 minutes of meandering through back roads, she pulled into the parking lot of the Lakeside Inn, a modest hotel on the outskirts of town. The young woman at the reception desk raised an eyebrow at Suzanne's drenched appearance, but said nothing as she processed the room request. "One night?" she asked. "To start," Suzanne replied, unsure of her plans beyond the immediate need for sanctuary. "We're pet-friendly," the receptionist added, noticing Scout. "No extra charge." Suzanne managed a grateful smile. "Thank you." The room was basic, but clean. A queen bed, desk, small armchair by the window overlooking the parking lot. Suzanne toweled Scout dry first, then changed into dry clothes herself. She sat on the edge of the bed, the events of the day crashing over her in waves. For the first time since discovering the video, she allowed herself to cry, deep sobs that seemed to come from the core of her being. Scout rested his head in her lap, offering silent comfort. When her tears finally subsided, Suzanne reached for her phone. 5 missed calls from Nathan, 2 voicemails. She ignored them, scrolling instead to Eleanor's number. "Suzanne?" Eleanor answered on the first ring. "Are you all right?" "Nathan just called me in a state." "I've left the house," Suzanne said, her voice raw from crying. "Just for tonight, maybe longer." I confronted him. "Oh, my dear," Eleanor sighed. "Where are you? Do you need anything?" "I'm at the Lakeside Inn," Suzanne replied. "I'm okay. Scout's with me." "That loyal boy," Eleanor said warmly. "Listen, Suzanne, I have a cabin on Cedar Lake. It's small, but private. You're welcome to use it if you need somewhere to stay longer term." Suzanne felt a rush of gratitude for her mother-in-law's unwavering support. "Thank you, Eleanor. I might take you up on that." After ending the call, Suzanne lay back on the bed, emotionally drained. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her. Her mind replayed the confrontation with Nathan, his initial contrition giving way to defensive accusations. Had there ever been a version of this scenario where they emerged with their marriage intact? She wasn't sure anymore. Around midnight, a gentle knock at her door startled her. Scout immediately stood at attention, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "Suzanne?" Nathan's voice came through the door. "I know you're in there. Please, let's talk." She remained silent, heart racing. How had he found her? "The receptionist told me your room number," he continued, as if reading her thoughts. "Please, Suze, 5 minutes." Suzanne approached the door, but didn't open it. "Go home, Nathan. I told you I need space." "I can't sleep knowing you're here," he insisted. "Just let me in so we can talk properly." "We said everything that needed saying at the house," Suzanne replied firmly. "Go home. I'm not leaving until you talk to me." Nathan's voice took on a stubborn edge she recognized all too well. "Then you'll be standing in that hallway all night," Suzanne responded. "I'm not opening this door." She heard a thump, Nathan leaning his forehead against the door, perhaps. "I love you, Suzanne. Despite everything, I do love you." The words, which might once have melted her resolve, now rang hollow. "Love doesn't lie for 7 months, Nathan. Love doesn't betray trust. That's not love. It's possession." Silence followed, then the sound of retreating footsteps. Suzanne remained by the door, listening until she was certain he had truly gone. Only then did she return to the bed, Scout jumping up beside her in clear violation of his usual floor-only rule. Tonight, Suzanne welcomed his warm presence as she drifted into fitful sleep. Morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through thin curtains. The storm had passed, leaving behind a washed, clean world of puddles and glistening leaves. Suzanne rose early, took Scout for a brief walk around the hotel grounds, then checked out. She wasn't ready to return home, but she couldn't hide in a hotel room either. She drove to Oak Ridge Elementary, arriving well before the first bell. The school was quiet. Most teachers not yet arrived. In her classroom, Suzanne found solace in routine, arranging desks, writing the day's schedule on the board, reviewing lesson plans. Scout settled contentedly in the reading corner, seemingly at home among the beanbags and bookshelves. Around 7:30, a knock at her classroom door broke her concentration. Looking up, Suzanne was surprised to see Tom Brennan standing in the doorway, 2 coffee cups in hand. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said hesitantly. The front office said you were already here. Not at all, Suzanne replied, gesturing for him to enter. Is everything okay with Charlie? Tom nodded, offering her one of the coffee cups. He's with my sister this morning. She drove in from Portland last night after I called her. He glanced at Scout, who had raised his head curiously. I see you brought a friend. My temporary teaching assistant. Suzanne attempted a smile. I hope the principal doesn't mind. Tom sat in one of the student desks, looking slightly absurd with his long legs. I wanted to thank you again, he said, after taking a sip of his coffee, for having the courage to tell me the truth. You don't need to thank me for that, Suzanne said. I do, Tom insisted. Most people would have focused solely on their own situation. You thought about Charlie. He paused, studying her face. You look tired. Rough night? Suzanne gave a humorless laugh. You could say that. I left the house. Confronted Nathan first. Tom winced. How did he take it? Initially contrite, then defensive, then accusatory, Suzanne summarized. He actually suggested there might be something inappropriate between you and me. Tom's eyebrows shot up. Seriously? Classic deflection, Suzanne said with a shrug. Easier to accuse others than face your own failures. What will you do now? Tom asked, his tone gentle. Suzanne looked around her classroom. The bright posters, the carefully arranged reading nook, the science station prepared for that day's experiment. Keep teaching, she said simply. It's what I know. It's what makes sense when everything else is chaotic. Tom nodded in understanding. And outside the classroom? I don't know yet, Suzanne admitted. Eleanor, Nathan's mother, offered me her cabin for a while. I might take her up on it. If you need anything, Tom said, Charlie and I are here. We're all navigating this storm together. In a way, there was something in his expression, not pity, but a genuine empathy that touched Suzanne deeply. They were both standing in the rubble of relationships destroyed by the same betrayal, trying to find a path forward. How's Charlie doing? She asked. Better than I expected, Tom replied. Kids are resilient, and I think he's relieved the secret is out. He smiled slightly. He asked about Scout this morning. Said you told him about your brave dog who dug up the truth? Suzanne glanced at Scout, who had returned to napping. He is brave and loyal. Better than most humans, I know. The first bell rang, signaling 30 minutes until classes began. Tom stood, adjusting his hospital ID badge. I should go. Early surgery. Of course, Suzanne said, rising as well. Thank you for the coffee. Tom hesitated at the door. Suzanne, would you and Scout like to join Charlie and me for dinner sometime? Nothing fancy, just friends supporting each other through a difficult time. The invitation surprised her. Under normal circumstances, she might have hesitated, aware of how such a dinner might appear. But normal had shattered the moment Scout dug up that metal box. We'd like that, she said. Thank you. After Tom left, Suzanne found herself smiling faintly, the first genuine smile in days. There was something reassuring in knowing she wasn't alone in this ordeal, that somewhere in town, another household was rebuilding after the same storm. Students began arriving, their cheerful chatter filling the hallways. Suzanne gave Scout a final pat and whispered, "Be good," before greeting the first arrivals at her door. Charlie was among them, his face lighting up at the sight of Scout. "You brought your dog to school," he exclaimed, dropping to his knees to pet the golden retriever. "Special circumstances," Suzanne explained with a wink. "He's helping me teach about animal behavior today." As the classroom filled with excited children, Suzanne felt a familiar sense of purpose return. She couldn't control what happened with Nathan or their marriage, but here, in this room, she could make a difference. She could ensure Charlie felt safe and supported. She could create a space where learning flourished despite the chaos of the adult world. And for today, that would be enough. Autumn gave way to winter, the seasons turning as Suzanne's life recalibrated around her new reality. The cabin Eleanor had offered became her sanctuary, a small, rustic structure nestled among pine trees at the edge of Cedar Lake, far enough from town to provide solitude, but close enough for her daily commute to Oak Ridge Elementary. The divorce proceedings began with clinical efficiency. Nathan hired an expensive attorney from the city, initially contesting Suzanne's right to half their assets, including the farmhouse. But Eleanor's intervention proved decisive. She presented her son with a choice: negotiate fairly with Suzanne or lose his mother's support, including her considerable investment in his marketing firm. On a crisp December morning, 3 months after Scout had unearthed the metal box that changed everything, Suzanne sat across from Nathan at their attorney's office, signing the final papers that legally ended their 12-year marriage. "I hope you're happy now," Nathan said, as they walked to the parking lot, his tone more resigned than bitter. Suzanne studied his face, the face she had once known better than her own, now strangely unfamiliar. "Happiness was never the goal, Nathan. Just peace." He nodded, seeming to understand. "I made a terrible mistake," he said, "not for the first time." "Yes," Suzanne agreed, "but perhaps we both needed to find different paths." They stood awkwardly beside her car, 12 years of shared history hanging between them like morning mist over the lake, visible but intangible, already fading. "Amber left town," Nathan said abruptly. "Moved back to Chicago last month." "I know," Suzanne replied. Tom had told her, relief evident in his voice, that Charlie would never have to face the woman again. Nathan's eyebrows rose. "Still friendly with the good doctor, I see." "We've become friends," Suzanne said simply. "We helped each other through a difficult time." Nathan looked as if he might say something more, but instead extended his hand. "Take care of yourself, Suze." Suzanne shook his hand briefly. "You too, Nathan." She watched him walk to his car, a strange sense of closure settling over her. The anger that had burned so fiercely in those initial weeks had gradually transformed, first into grief, then acceptance, and finally into a calm understanding that some endings, however painful, were necessary for growth. At the cabin that evening, Scout greeted her with his usual enthusiasm, bounding through snow-covered ground to meet her car. Eleanor had stopped by, evidenced by the freshly baked bread on the counter and a note expressing her love. Despite the divorce, Eleanor had remained a constant in Suzanne's life, their bond strengthened rather than weakened by Nathan's betrayal. Suzanne prepared a simple dinner, then settled on the porch swing with a blanket and Scout beside her. The lake stretched before them, partially frozen, the setting sun painting the ice in shades of pink and gold. She had grown to love this peaceful place, with its bird songs and wind-whispered pines. Her phone chimed with a message from Tom. "Charlie got an A+ on his science project. He says he couldn't have done it without your help. We're celebrating with pizza. Room for 2 more?" Suzanne smiled, typing back. "Scout and I would love to join. Give us 20 minutes. Their friendship had developed naturally over the past months, founded on mutual respect and the shared experience of rebuilding life after betrayal. Tom had thrown himself into being a more present father, cutting back his hospital hours and attending every one of Charlie's robotics competitions. The change in Charlie was remarkable. He'd made friends at school, smiled more often, and his drone now recorded beautiful nature footage rather than painful secrets. Suzanne and Tom had been careful, establishing clear boundaries from the start. They were friends supporting each other through a difficult transition. They enjoyed each other's company, had dinner together often, and maintained a relationship that prioritized Charlie's well-being above all else. There was an undeniable attraction, but neither rushed to define it, understanding that healing needed to precede any new beginning. The pizza dinner that night was filled with laughter as Charlie regaled them with stories of his science teacher's reaction to his wind energy project. Scout lay contentedly beneath the table, occasionally accepting pepperoni slices that Charlie sneaked to him. Suzanne, Charlie said, still adjusting to calling her by her first name outside of school. Dad says we're going hiking tomorrow if the weather's nice. Want to come?" Tom looked up, a hint of color touching his cheeks. "Charlie, Suzanne might have other plans." "Actually," Suzanne said, smiling, "Scout and I would love to join you. He's been begging for a good hike." Charlie beamed. "Awesome! There's this really cool waterfall we found last time. It's probably frozen now, which makes it even cooler." Later, as Tom walked Suzanne and Scout to her car, a comfortable silence fell between them. "Thank you for including us," Suzanne said finally, her breath visible in the cold night air. "Always," Tom replied, his eyes sincere in the streetlight's glow. "Charlie adores you. And Scout." He hesitated, then added softly, "So do I." Suzanne felt warmth spread through her despite the winter chill. "We feel the same way." For a moment, they stood close, the possibility of something more tangible than ever before. Tom reached out, gently touching her cheek, his eyes asking a question. Suzanne answered by leaning forward, their lips meeting in a soft, tentative kiss. A first step rather than a destination, a comma rather than a period in their unfolding story. "Good night, Suzanne," Tom whispered when they parted, his smile reflecting her own. "Good night, Tom," she replied, feeling lighter than she had in months. Spring arrived with a riot of wildflowers carpeting the forest floor around the cabin. Suzanne had decided to buy it from Eleanor, who was delighted to keep the property in the family, as she still considered Suzanne family regardless of the divorce. On a perfect May morning, Suzanne stood in her classroom at Oak Ridge Elementary, watching as her students presented their end-of-year projects to parents and siblings who had come for the special showcase. Charlie's drone demonstration was the highlight. He had programmed it to spell "Thank you, Miss Vance" in mid-air, eliciting applause from everyone present. "Quite the talented young man," came Eleanor's voice beside her. The older woman had come at Suzanne's invitation, proud to see the classroom where her former daughter-in-law made such a difference. "He reminds me of myself at that age," Suzanne confessed. "So eager to learn, to understand how things work." Eleanor patted her hand affectionately. "You've built something beautiful here, Suzanne, in your classroom and in your life." Suzanne followed Eleanor's gaze to where Tom stood watching Charlie's demonstration, his expression one of unmistakable pride. "We're taking it slow," Suzanne said quietly, "one day at a time." "The best foundations are built that way," Eleanor replied wisely, "deliberately, with care." That evening, after the showcase, Tom and Charlie helped Suzanne pack the last of her classroom materials for the summer break. Charlie had been officially promoted to middle school, though he'd extracted a promise from Suzanne that she would still help with his science projects. "I have something for you," Suzanne told Charlie as they carried boxes to Tom's car. She handed him a small, wrapped package. Charlie opened it eagerly, revealing a compass with his name engraved on the back. "Wow, this is so cool! Every explorer needs a compass," Suzanne explained, "to find their way, even when the path isn't clear." Charlie hugged her tightly. "Thanks, Suzanne. I'll take it on all our adventures this summer." "Speaking of summer," Tom said, closing the car trunk, "Charlie and I have been talking. We know you're planning to fix up the cabin, and I happen to be pretty handy with tools." "We want to help," Charlie interjected enthusiastically. "Dad says we could make it our summer project, all three of us, and Scout," he added quickly. Suzanne felt a rush of emotion. "I'd love that," she said simply. Back at the cabin that evening, Suzanne and Tom sat on the porch, while Charlie and Scout explored the lakeshore. The setting sun painted everything in golden light, a perfect end to a meaningful day. "I have something for you too," Tom said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small metal box, similar to the one Scout had unearthed in the garden nearly 8 months earlier. Suzanne looked at it with surprise. "What's this?" "Open it," Tom encouraged. With slightly trembling fingers, Suzanne unlatched the box. Inside lay a USB drive, just like before. But this one had a small label with her name written in Tom's precise handwriting. "It's not a video," Tom assured her, seeing the momentary flash of apprehension in her eyes. It's something else entirely. Curious, Suzanne took the drive inside to her laptop. Tom followed, standing behind her chair as she inserted it, and opened the only file it contained. To her surprise, it was a collection of photographs, Charlie's drone images of Cedar Lake and the surrounding forest through the seasons. The final image showed the cabin from above, with Suzanne and Scout visible on the porch, both looking peaceful and at home. "Charlie has been documenting your healing journey," Tom explained softly. "He said technology revealed the truth that hurt you, so it should also capture the truth of your new beginning." Tears pricked Suzanne's eyes. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Tom knelt beside her chair. "Suzanne, I know we agreed to take things slowly, and I respect that completely." His eyes, earnest and kind, met hers. "But I want you to know that Charlie and I see our future with you in it. No pressure, no timeline, just the truth of how we feel." Suzanne reached out, touching his face gently. "The truth," she repeated softly. "So different from the last time I found a USB drive." "Different in every way," Tom agreed. From the doorway came a small cough. They turned to see Charlie standing there, Scout at his heels. "Did you show her, Dad?" Tom smiled. "I did." Charlie approached, suddenly looking nervous. "Do you like it, Suzanne? The drone pictures?" "I love them," Suzanne assured him, pulling him into a hug. "They're the most beautiful gift I've ever received." Charlie beamed, then looked between the adults expectantly. "So, are we going to be a family now?" Tom cleared his throat. "Charlie, remember what we discussed. No pressure." "It's okay," Suzanne interrupted gently. She looked at Charlie, then at Tom, and finally at Scout, who had settled contentedly at her feet. "The truth is, I think we already are a family. Not the kind I expected to have, but maybe the kind I was always meant to find." Charlie's face lit up. "Really?" Suzanne nodded, her heart full. "Really?" Tom reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "When you trust a loyal heart," he said, glancing meaningfully at Scout, "it leads you to where you're supposed to be." Outside, the lake reflected the evening sky, a canvas of orange and purple stretching to the horizon. Inside the cabin, Suzanne Vance found herself at the center of a new story, one built on honesty, trust, and the courage to begin again. The betrayal that had once shattered her world had ultimately led her here, to this moment of perfect clarity. As Scout stretched contentedly before the fireplace and Charlie eagerly outlined his plans for cabin renovations, Suzanne exchanged a smile with Tom, a smile that held understanding, appreciation, and the quiet promise of all that lay ahead. The metal box that Scout had unearthed in her garden had revealed a painful truth, but it had also set her on a path to discover something far more precious, the truth of her own resilience and the family she was meant to find. Summer stretched before them like an open book, its pages waiting to be filled with new memories, and Suzanne, once betrayed but never broken, felt ready at last to write the next chapter. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.